Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today I'm in conversation with Zimbabwean War Veteran Margaret Dongo. Enjoy this thought-provoking conversation. Margaret Dongo, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you very much for extending the invitation to me.
Margaret, you got into Zimbabwean politics, opposition politics, at a time when people were terrified to get into, to stand up to Robert Mugabe, to stand up to ZANU PF, to stand up to what appeared, Margaret, was one man, one party rule. But you decided that you're going to stand up. Talk to me about the thought process of doing that.
True, I did, but it was a very hard decision to make. I had no choice because there's something that I want to make it clear. You know, my love for the country. In terms of Margaret Dongo, the former liberation fighter, what comes first in my life is my country. So probably it's because of the experience that I got from a tender age, worse off, you know, during the armed struggle and after, that forced me actually to go into opposition politics. The idea was not to destroy the country, but the idea was to, you know, continue, you know, fight for the ideals of the liberation struggle. And, you know, being opposition does not necessarily mean that you're opposite. The issue is to create an environment to criticize the status quo, to make sure that things are moving well. But in our politics, it's not well understood. It's very, very difficult.
Talk to me, Margaret, about you saying it was not easy, it was difficult. What is it that you saw that you disagreed with so strongly that you thought, I'm going to walk away from ZANU PF and start something new?
You know, the major question was that people had actually forgotten the reason why we went to war.
Wow.
And people had started to relax in everything. Yes, we got the political power, but we didn't have the economic power. And the mushrooming of corruption and other dubious methods actually was the one that was disturbing me most. And the times when I got into parliament myself, you know, it was so critical. That is the time when Zoom came up and things were not well in ZANU, because some people were beginning to realize that we were taking the wrong path. Where in actual fact, we're actually moving towards a one-party state, which of course I know we didn't fight for that. We fought for democracy, and we fought to allow everyone else to exercise his or her right. But then that alone was actually polluting the party. So I thought I would help to fight within, but I was not well understood. I remember the very time when I was elected to be a member of parliament. When I got in parliament, I was very open to them to say, yes, I'm under the ticket of ZANU PF, but having been elected by the majority, even those who didn't elect me require my representation. So I am going to be a representative on Dandendindondo to cover up for my constituency. That statement didn't augur well with the party, because when you're a member of the party, there are set rules that you're supposed to follow. But for me, I thought to some extent they retarded democracy. And I think other people have the opportunity to be heard. And that's why we go for elections anyway. And when you become a leader in parliament, I think this is what I want other parliamentarians to learn. When you become a member of parliament, you are almost a national leader. You are there to debate national issues, and you should view all issues discussed in parliament on national level, irregardless of the party that you represent. Whereas for women, you become a one entity. Whatever issues that you are going to discuss about women, it's regardless of political affiliation, you just have to be one. You just have to agree to the positive side that change the lives of women.
So you're saying you thought you could affect change within ZANU PF, but that was not possible. Talk to me about that. What were you pushing up against, and what kind of pushback did you get?
True, I thought I could make changes within ZANU PF, starting from the Central Committee. Don't forget, I was the youngest member of Central Committee of the ruling party.
Yes.
And it was not easy for me to be approved as a member of Central Committee. Because there was always this thinking that, Margaret is a controversial person, she's too critical, she can't be part of us. You remind me, because the first day I sat in the Central Committee, one nationalist big chef was...
How old were you? How old were you when you said to the Central Committee? Do you remember?
I was in my 20s.
20s.
I remember the first day I was asked to serve tea. And I said, how on earth? I'm a member of Central Committee and I'm not supposed to be serving tea. Ushers are there to be serving tea. And someone says, you see, she's very arrogant. And I don't know what they expected of me. You see, and maybe that's the arrogance that they didn't want. They wanted me to be a yes person, which I wasn't in any case. I was a person who thought, having gone to war, I liberated myself politically, socially. So it helped me build my confidence. You see, so I am a person who knew what I fought for. I didn't fight to be subservient to an individual. I fought as a fighter to help change the situation in the country. So that's the role I played.
So interesting that you've gone to war. We'll talk about that. You've gone to war. You've liberated yourself socially and politically. Your thinking is different. But this senior Central Committee member clearly has not changed, because this person still sees you as a young girl, 20 years old. You shall serve us tea. Talk to me about that difference.
It's something that is painful for someone to think that, always, this is why we are in this predicament. There's very little respect for youth. Even the youth who will try to stand up within their own political parties, they are regarded as minors. You never grow. And that's the mentality that my party...
And women too.
Yes, that's the mentality that my party had. I remember even in the Central Committee, it was so difficult for me even to make contribution. One day, when I tried to raise my hand, there was a controversial issue. And the president kept on ignoring me until, I was very close to the First Lady. I will talk to you about it. She was my mentor. Until she realized it and she wrote a note to me.
That is Sally
Mugabe.
Yeah.
She gave her secretary to pass it on to me. I opened it and she said, keep on raising your hand to embarrass him.
Wow.
He'll give you a platform.
Wow.
Imagine, that's from Sally. She was pro-women. I liked her. She's the one who mentored me to be where I am today. So the moment I got the note, I raised up my hand and I kept on raising it. And Bob looked at me and he said, but what the hell on earth? What is she doing? Someone is speaking and she's raising up a hand. And I kept on raising. I just ignored him. And he said, oh, I noticed that your hand is up. You're going to be the next speaker. Couldn't believe it. And I was so emotional. When I was given my chance, Trevor, believe it or not, I said to him, I'm surprised that you still call me a youth. But when I crossed the border, there was no one at the border. When I crossed to go to Mozambique, there was no one at the border to tell me that I was still young, I should go back to school. You accommodated me. without looking into my age. Suffered the Matekenya, went through the military training. You were in overseas, you were in London, UK or America, studying, and we were languishing in abject poverty. Today you're calling me a youth. You're calling me a youth. Do you want me to go to the National Archives when you people are no more to find out how you destroyed or built this country?
What did he say?
Well, there was Musipa and, Cephas. Cephas was...
Gentleman.
Yes, and a neutral person. And he says, oh, Mr. President, this issue of Margaret, I think let's let it rest, because otherwise it will create commotion. Because immediately after I had spoken, Ruth came out. You know Ruth Chinamani.
Yes. Firebrand.
She would be echoing, tell them my daughter, tell them my daughter, tell them they've done that. I've stayed in solitary confinement for 11 years. I've suffered. My kids, you know what Ruth did? You know, she was she was a character.
You know, you make me miss that era, the era of you, Ruth Chinamano, and many others. Allow me, Margaret, to take you back to when you were 15 years old. You decided to cross the border to go and join the liberation struggle. I want to understand, what is it that made you do that at 15 years old? Share with us your state of mind. What is this that drove you at that tender age to go and join the war?
Probably, Trevor, I grew up in a ghetto in Highfield. And the type of life I grew up in is, in a ghetto. And my family was highly political. My father was Ndau, is late, from Chipinga. And my mother was from Tsonzo, is from Vumbunu. And when they were highly political. My father went to school with Ndabaning Stole and Ndangane at Chikore Mission. So they would mingle together all the time, and the other Ndaus who were actually living in Highfields and people from other, tribes and so forth. They used to have meetings, those private meetings at our house, political meetings. Every evening they come from work. So what I used to do the moment they come for their meetings, as kids, you know what used to happen? Get into your bedroom, go and sleep. You are told to sleep before you even want to sleep. So we get into our bedroom and they started discussing, and I'm very inquisitive. I'm listening to say, what is happening in that room? And they start talk about their stories of what happened to, at their workplace, how one was harassed by the whites, how he was kicked or slapped, or how he was told to carry the white baby to town and refused and ended up being beaten. And, they would say their experience day in, day out. And I'm listening. Each time they had meetings, it never failed. The SB was very clever, and it was
special branch.
The special branch, and they had sources. So what would happen, Trevor, every evening, each time they had their meetings, the police, the SB
special branch
would come, would pitch up. And they would use the kitchen door. They would just break the kitchen door and they are in, and get into my father's bedroom, pull him out and put him in this jeep, and they go to Mbizi police station.
Wow.
So I knew very well each time he's arrested, my mother would say very early at 6 o'clock, can you take the tea to Mbizi? And then I would start crying and say, why me all the time, mommy? Why you should, father do that all the time? I have to get the tea before I go to school. It was not easy. So I get...
Your contribution as a child to the liberation struggle.
So I got the tea to the Mbizi, and there he's standing on the fence waiting for the tea. And I give him the flask of tea and so forth. And one day, it was in June. It was so cold, and I was late. I couldn't even pick my shoes, and I went barefooted, and I was crying, from Machipi, from my Egypt lines to Mbizi police station. When I got there, I said, "But Dad, next time, make sure you are not in here again." Because each time I go back, I'm late at school. I went to school, to Nyandoro Primary School. And the teacher Chaka beats me every time
Wow,
I
because you're
get
late.
because each time I come late, he beats me. And I just left and I went home. And I think my father felt bad. I could watch him look at me when I was going back. So I grew up in that environment. And come next, what happened is my father took me to a boarding school
All right.
in Rusape Trial Mission. That's where what motivated me now to say, I am going to join the liberation struggle. There we met the displaced children from Tangwena village. And they came to the mission school where they were taken care of. And we, as young students from different, walks of life, were told to look after them and give them, all the support and so forth. They used to tell us stories of how they lived in the mountains, how they were removed from their fertile land, and how it was so touching. It was so touching. I remember very well. It was a group of young girls, and they were telling about their experience at Tangwena village. And I said to myself, okay, I think when I grow up, I'm going to see what I will do. And then later on, when I was at my secondary, then I also went to a school which is, first of all, I was at St. Patrick's, from St. Patrick's Castle and Secondary School in Mtema. That was near Chipinga. That's where the war started. And that's where I went to school. And then that's where I began to see the real part of life. And, together with the other girls who came from the neighborhood in Chipinge, they used to tell us, their experience with the Vines Wanamkoma, the terrorists, they called us, And they used to tell us, when they used to go for these bases, political orientation during at night and so forth. Then I said to myself, oh my God, now I got a chance. So when I went home on holiday, came back to Harare, I said to my mom one day, my mom used to do that stripping, plowing,
Yeah.
remember?
Okay.
So when we went to one of our fields where there is now tobacco auction floor, I said to her, but mother, I think this is the last time for you to see me. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, no, Mama. And she didn't believe that. She was shocked. She couldn't believe it. She said, please, if you want to go and join your other terrorists, make sure you don't do it. You are going to die. Then I said, no, I'm not going to join them, but I'm just saying to you, make sure you are not going to see me next term. But let me tell you, my experience was very bad. There was no reason that I would not stop joining the liberation struggle. My mom was doing stream plowing. Cultivation. And then when one day she was 9 months pregnant, and imagine, she used to wake us up at 4 a.m. to go and do the cultivation. And then we come at 7 o'clock when the municipal police are still preparing to come and, because they used to guard the places. One day, she knew very well that she was about to give birth, and she wanted to make sure that she finished a certain portion. So we were together in the field until later, 7:30. Then I said, Mommy, it's getting late. The police, the municipal police are coming. Let's go home. And she said, no, let me finish. I want to finish here. And then all of a sudden, we raised up our heads and we saw they were almost near. And then I took my hoe and I started running away. And my mother, by that time, when she was trying to take a hoe, she tried to run away and she fell down.
Damn.
And I cried. I couldn't believe it. And I was so young, and she was 9 months pregnant,
Pregnant.
and I felt she was about to give birth. I had to wait for it. I said, whatever is going to happen. They were getting closer, and they even got closer. I touched my mother's hand, and she was limping until we got home. And when we got home, straight away she went and she delivered a baby girl, Dorothy, our last born, Dorothy Mtetwa. And that was in my mind. And I said, have a look. For how long can we go like this? But imagine, I was still in my tender age. For how long can we go like this? So coupled with that,
All those things.
yes, that's what motivated me to go to the liberation struggle. The issue of the Tangwena village girls and the issue of how we lived in Highfields. Do you know we used to walk from Highfields to go to Kambuzuma Garden Party just to watch a film show. Yeah, not tick.
So the conditions at home, the police coming in, knocking down the door, and you have experienced these people that have been displaced. Those are the factors that cause you to cross the border. Talk to us as briefly as you may, how you get to do that, with who, and how the journey is like.
The journey was tough. It was an uphill struggle. And also to make the final decision to leave was not easy. Because that's the time when about 200 people, students, had left our school. And our school was heavily guarded. There were patrols after every hour. Because there was this fear that, another group would go. So what we had to do was to do a thorough study to make sure that we don't make a mistake on the intervals of their movements so that we will be able to sneak out, which was not very easy. But we realized that as time went on, at first it was tense, especially after when the 200 left. And after a month, the soldiers were beginning to relax. They used to come through our windows to check whether we were all sleeping. It was so fearful. And after some time, instead of moving after every 30 minutes, they extended to an hour. And they ended up also sleeping for almost 3-4 hours without, making their patrols. So we noticed that for almost a weekend. We said, okay, if we use this time to escape, I think we'll be able to make it. So lucky, fortunate enough, it was raining, and which means the environment was good for us. So we were 4 girls. Irene Mdekunye, myself, Betty Gabas, and the other lady, I forget. And we decided to go. We just took our, what we call those backpacks and a few clothes. Because one of my friend, Betty Gabas, had lived in Chiping and had stayed with comrades, and they'd got a little bit of training in terms of how to, if ever they had an attack, how do they escape that attack. So when we were, actually there's a river, Tanganda River, in at Casaland, where we cross before we get to the main third road. So when we were crossing, Betty says, no, we are not going to use the main road. What we're going to do, we are going to cross through the river. We are all going to swim. And I said, but why? It's very cold. How can we swim at night? And she says, no, if you go through the road, the dogs can follow our spoor. They were taught all this. So the only way we can do is to cross through the middle of the river. We have to swim, like it or not, let's throw our bag. So we swam, we went through the river, and we crossed the river. We walked from our school to Tangana. That's about more than 200, I think, almost kilometers. We walked, it was not a joke, and we was very young. You know, my chest was flat. I was an innocent baby.
15 years old.
15 years old, a very innocent baby. All of us, our chests were flat, and we were like school kids. And imagine we're coming from primary to secondary. I was doing my form 2. And we walked until we got to Zona T Estate. When we got to Mount Slender, there was my sister. All of a sudden, I don't know how she pitched up and she could tell to say something wrong. There's something happening. These girls are crossing the border. And she found me. Then she says, but Maggie, where are you going? Don't go there. There's some people who were killed last night. There are soldiers patrolling in the borderline. And I said, but you know, Trevor, there's something that I'm going to tell you. Believe it or not. Taiti muchivanhu kudzamirwa. Paingoitika chimwe chinhu chekuti chinongokupa that strength yekuti you don't even think of anything or your life or whatever. Vaiti kudzamirwa, taingotaura tichiti kudzamirwa. Zvezvekuti vhudzi rinofamba iri, unongoenda aumbotarisa zviri mberi, hautarisa zviri kumashure. So when my sister came, I was so harsh, it was not myself. Just regera, I'm going to fight for my country. If you want, join us. If you don't want, just get out. Then we walked through. We go to the Zona T Estate, but asangana nemasoja aya. Get. Muri kuendepi? Tikati tadzingwa chikoro. Tiri kuuya kuzokaya tea. Yes, kuti tibhadhare school fees. From no zvinongouya. And they believed us. Because mumunda macho mamakazara vana vanga vachikaya tea. They believed us. Patambosiya mabhegi edu pataenda mingle mutii imomo. Ndo patatanga kutema tea, picking tea. Kuti zviite zvienderane nezvatataura. So they moved away. The moment they moved, isusu vatakontinya nejeni yedu. We walked the whole night. And we were so hungry. Chingwa chatinacho changa chapera. Makumbo anga azimba. You know when you walk, maoko anga azimba, makumbo azimba. Saka amaniru, you know what we could see was a light. Panekamwe kamba so. Papa, pari pasango. Let's follow that light. We never knew. Even if we were going to go in the hands of soldiers, lucky enough, when we got there was this old woman, angaripo ega, and she says to us, "Murukumbuende pari?" Tikati turikuda kuende kuMozambique. Koitei? Tikati toda kunotora zvibhamu zvekuti tuye tizorwa, meaning kuti we are going to get guns for us to come and fight. Zvikazina mbuya vaya, pane vanhu vakafa vakaurayiwa muno mubhodha nezuro vana echikora mumandauka. Vana echikora, musaenda, petukai kanyi. Mbuya vaya ndobvati chipindai mumba mungu, vanga vari mukakitchen. Chipindai imba, vanga vachigara vega vana vavo vese vanga vakaenda. Chipindai mumhatso. Ndobva tapinda mukitchen muya vanga vachidziya moto papaine manhanga vanga vabika. Ndobva watora manhanga aya zvikanzi chidyai manhanga. Ndobva tadya manhanga aya. Tapedza kudya manhanga aya vanga vaine imba yavo yavairara. Ndobva vatiisa kubva vativharira mumba muya tese. Vativharira mumba muya tese midnight. Tanzwa vhudzi kufa. Unonzwa vhudzi kufamba. Tikati kuna Beti Gabasa, vhudzi rangu riri kufamba musoro. Zvikanzi naBeti neniwo. Tikati saka chii? Tanzwa kuti chwa kunze. Ndobva tamborara. Tikati ngatibude. Saka papaine this small window, not tuma window mahuts, you know, our huts. So we started pushing each other through that window. Trese tiri 4. Ndobva tabuda. We started crawling. Betty knew how to. She had taught us. When we get to the situation, we started crawling. Takupinda musango.
So you're running away without this woman aware that you're running
away? No, yeah, because we thought she would take us back. That time, we for help. We could take these kids back to school. Tikati ngatiende. Saka crawler now tapinda musango ndobva tatanga kufamba. Unfortunately, we heard sounds. sevanhu vanga chitya kufamba. Then we all fell down on prone position. Trevor, you won't believe this. Inini somewhere ina believe nenyaya dzinotaurwa dzemudzimu dziya. When we fell down, we all fell asleep. Kurara kuita flat. Hapana kambozungunuka kana kaita sei. Until kuma 2 kwatoedza, kuma 5 kwakutoedza shiri dzakuti ndo patiri kusumuka. Tasumuka sobva tatoona kuti taakudhuze nekubhodha kuspunga bhaira. But then we had to climb mountains kuti tisvike ukoko. Apa anga apfuura aya anga ari papatrol aya anga ari masoja. Saka we spent the whole day to get to Spunga Beira. When we got to Spunga Beira, we were very unfortunate because we were seen as if tata tumwa. Because pangobva kuita fight between makamarada nechi
Rhodesian forces.
Yes, they said, but how did you manage to escape Canada? How did you manage to pass through? And
so what did they do to you?
They harassed us. Do you know they got to even to a stage where they to ask their lady soldiers kuti kubvisa mapens kuti tarisa kuti tione kuti hatina matube here, because they thought kuti tine matubes ataiswa ekuti tizouraya macomrades, you see. So you imagine we're still young. I told you our chests were plain. We're very innocent and we didn't know anything.
So now you've crossed. You are in the camps. Talk to me about the training itself. What do you go through? Because you started off in what is this? You started off in Chimoy, 1975.
Yes.
You started off in Chimoy, and then you went to receive military training. You ended up being trained as a medical assistant. Talk to me about that training there. How was it being in the camps there?
Very interesting. I was military. Got my military training when I was still very young, and Vivian Mwashita was one of my trainers. You know, we were so close, and she was one of my trainers. I got my military training. What was involved in military training was, before even military training, you'd go through political orientation. For you to understand why are you going into this military training, why do we need to carry arms to go and fight, the Rhodesian forces. So you go through that, political orientation, and then later on you go through the military training, which involved, a lot of drills, gun handling and so forth. I remember very well, used to run more than 12 kilometers at times in the morning. When you're starting the journey in the morning, you'll be saying, toi toi yekuseni, yewerere, inoda vakagwinya, baya. When you're coming back, you say, toi toi, yeah. You don't even have the voice, and it was not easy.
Tell me, it was not easy. At that particular, did you have any moments of regretting? Why did I come? Let me go back. Talk to me about that.
I never regretted. It's funny at my age. I never had a regret.
Even as tough as it was.
As tough
12
as it
kilometers
was.
in the
Because
morning.
the experience that I had from when, before I came, and what made me to decide to leave, probably, that's what built my strength. I never regretted. All I wanted, I thought it was too late. I should receive my military training and start to carry out my duties. I never regretted, I want to be honest with you.
And then you train. Why did you decide to train as a medical assistant? Was that your choice, or?
It wasn't it wasn't my choice. It was a decision by the commanders, because they took the young generation, especially those that were coming from school. I remember it was myself, Atsari, Dignity, she's still alive, Sam Alet, who went for that training, and we were trained by he was a Zapkeda.
Medical guy.
I think you know him.
Yes,
he was in the army, dark, and he's the one who trained us. I used to do. I don't know. I have just
It's all
forgotten.
right.
I know
It's
the
okay.
name will come, will pitch up. So it's the one who trained us as medical assistants. Why? Because they also, we needed much of them, especially in the forefront and in the base, in the rear base. We had a clinic in Chimoyo, which was called Parenyatwa base. So all the victims in the field
Would come
in the
back for
forefront would
treatment.
come back for
Yeah.
treatment. Trevor, some would come handling their intestines in the hands. Some would come with a rotten, broken head, legs. Some would, it's horrible. When I look at the situation right now and how the comrades are being treated, it pains me. I want to be honest with you. It pains me. It pains me. You could find someone with a rotten leg, caterpillars actually. You clean it, you suture it, you do everything. Comrades suffered, and we didn't have all the medication that was required.
Comrades suffered, and you are angry when you see the way they are treated. What about these that pretend that they are comrades? I mean, is it not ridiculous that in 2022 we have the number of people that claim to be comrades uh, larger than what we had in 1980? What does that do to you?
That is done for financial benefits, and it's betraying. It's so betrayal. Yes, it doesn't mean to say if you played a role, we can't say it's only the war veterans who liberated this country. Every one of us played a role.
But we don't pretend that we're
But
war
you
veterans.
don't have to pretend that you're a war veteran. It's such a disappointing issue.
But that's another thing. What about the party itself allowing these people to pretend and use them that they're as war veterans? For somebody like you, you're describing this pain of seeing these people coming holding their intestines, and you have somebody riding on that pain for financial benefit.
It's a sad story that's very difficult to narrate. And I never thought one day this is what our leaders would do to us. It's a very, very sad story. I never thought. To make matters worse, the few that are on the echelons of power, they never experienced this life that we had in the camps. Never ever. Some passed through, some never, used to visit. They came as visitors, announcing their policies or talking about their programs, but they were never, I'm now, I get sensitive. I'm almost shivering when I get to this. I get sensitive because you've taken my memory aback, and I'm seeing a picture of what we went through, and I'm also comparing that picture with what the living comrades are going through. It's painful and it's
And a
touching.
picture of those that never went to war, who are
That are
riding,
enjoying the fruits,
in 7 Mercedes Benz and that kind of stuff. This cannot be fair.
It cannot be fair, but I'm always, I'm a faith believer. I'm a Christian, I'm a faith believer. I feel that one day they'll get what they deserve. Never mind how comfortable they are. Never mind what luxurious life they have. One day, it's like a person who kills. One day you confess before you go down. It will come up with
God says, revenge is not yours. Revenge is mine.
Yes.
Were you deployed to the front to fight, or you remained in the bases?
Much of it because I was trained as a nurse.
Yeah.
I actually went around the bases. I stayed, you notice that I stayed in a number of bases.
Yes.
When we had a problem in 1977, during the detente, after the detente, in fact, the Frelimo never wanted any military people to stay in their camps. But because we were young, and they couldn't tell that we were military trained. So the part took an advantage of us being young, and we used to be deployed. I remember very well. We went to Doroi, the four of us. There were more than 6,000, people at that camp, and we're responsible for the health sector. The few of us young girls. And from Doroi, again, we moved to Tembwe, Tete province. From Tete province, we moved. I used to move from place to place until such time when we had been, because I was also stubborn. It was not just much.
So Robert Mugabe was right that was stubborn.
I was a bit naughty because I was very young but short and bully. I don't know whether it happens short people only. I was sort of a person who would want to feel that I'm there and I can also defend myself. And it didn't only start in parliament. Even during the war, people would tell, this is comrade teacher. I was not a yes person. You'd have to convince me to do something.
Comrade Tichaona Mohondo.
Yes.
Who gave you that name?
Well, it was my choice, because when we crossed the border, in fact, what happened is the first thing we'll be told is to
change your name.
Change your name. So when I saw the environment that I saw at the first camp that we got to Chibawawa, where even my captain, the former captain of my school, he didn't have fingers in his toes. They'd been, by Mate Kenya, those jika fleas. And he was dressed in those milli bags, tattered, he had sewn them into a trouser, and the other one was like a jacket, and he was covered with like a person who is, what the mentally disturbed people do in town. Then I said, I couldn't believe. When I saw him, I said, Mukoma King. And he said, no, don't say that. The moment you say that, then we are in trouble. I've got a Chimurenga name. So he gave me his Chimurenga name. And he said to me, why did you come? And I said, but you didn't write letters to us to tell us to say don't come. You should have written to us to say things are not well. Says, how could we write? You should have written letters to tell us that things are not well.
And your name, Tichaona Mohondo, tell us what it meant.
The reason I gave myself the name Tichaona Mohondo is after I'd seen the environment that was surrounding me. It was a war situation for forever. And I said to myself, if I have to survive this, I have to accept it. I have to accept the type of life I'm getting into. The only way is to accept that tichaona muhondo. Hondo yacho ndichaonana nayo. That's how I gave them.
Very powerful name. Let's go to a place that's problematic. A lot of young women who participated in the war, who were in the camps, talk about the abuse. What did you see? What was your experience?
Trevor, there are stories that have never been told. The truth has never been told about the history of the liberation struggle vis-a-vis women. It has never been told. And I'm hoping one day we will have some people who will be bold enough to stand up and talk about it, or even the writing. But it's a pity that very little is going to come out from the women themselves, because they've been marginalized intentionally to make sure that they are not able, some of them, to speak for themselves. True, women have been abused. Some women ended up with babies, not because they wanted to be babies, to have the babies, but they were raped. Women lived under a terrible environment. You know, we used to have a camp where if you get pregnant, that's where you get dumped. It was called Osibisa. And if there are any attacks, one thing you know, you have to have your baby, your gun, to run away. And in terms of feeding, there was no special feed for those kids. Those women suffered. Whenever they got feeds, yes, here and there, but not always. You know, some people were abused by the chefs themselves. You know, they could have more than 3, 4 girlfriends. When he comes from Maputo, he says, okay, go and find a girl for me from the camp. And, you know, we used to have female camp commanders. They would ring the whistle, call women at a parade, just looking for a girl, for a chef to go back to bed.
So you are
with.
paraded.
You are paraded. Not because they want all of you, because
want
they know one. And normally those who knew that they can be victims, they used to run away. And the way I'm talking, I think if my friends listen to that, they will remember the days when they did the same, they ran away. And they remember the day when it also happened to them. So it was not in agreement for those that would have whatever sex or whatever. Because you are in the struggle, there is no choice.
But now that the struggle is over, what do you think should be done? I mean, this story has not been told, like you're saying.
It should be told. And, you know, I wish we had an opportunity. I was saying to some people that, you know, though for those that are still alive who broke the virginity of other, you know, girls without their consent, they should be sued because they are still alive. They should be sued. But I know that language would not augur well with the ZANU PF per se, because...
So, you see, here's the thing, and push back as much as you want. I believe that there's a lot of things, Margaret, that happened in the war that we have not come to terms with. There's a lot of things that happened in the camps in Maputo, in Mozambique, Chimoy, in Zambia. There's a lot of bad things that happened in the execution of the struggle. We have not spoken about those things. And I believe that until we exercise that ghost of Kukuraundi and all these other things, we'll continue being where we are. This anger, this toxicity. What's your view on that?
I totally agree with you. Have a look. Our kids have to know the truth. They have to have the history of what happened to be where we are today. They will begin to have respect for us. They need to know. This needs to be spelled out. Everything that happened.
Do you think it will get to that point where the story will be told?
I thought with the coming up of the war veterans, what do we call it? The archives.
Yeah.
I thought probably they would use that opportunity to try and gather all this information. But I think there's a bit of resistance from the young fighters because of the way they've handled them. Even today, do you know that they seem to be dodging them? They don't want to address their problems. They want to address their problems in a different way, the way they like, but they don't take into consideration what we've been talking about. Their experiences during the war and their experience after the war and where they are today. They don't look into that. But the issue is, you know, the problem that we have, Trevor, is that we have put power before the people too much, to the extent that we've even forgotten where we came from. Tarara nezamuka mafanika wana vadiki. We forget that. And we forget kuti life is, you know, it is the world that continues, but human beings perish. Saka we are forgetting kuti no, whatever we do, it remains. And we forget kuti the same people, and they talk to people nicely when you are going up, for you meet the same people when you are going down. watch this space. We are towards the elections. There will be a lot of good things talked about, comrades. There will be a lot of good things talked about war veterans. But in real fact, these people are living in abject poverty.
The real war veterans.
The real war veterans are living in abject poverty. But come towards the elections, there will be a lot of good things talked about them. But talking about somebody who is dying, somebody who is suffering doesn't make any sense. Anyway.
So you come back from the war and you go to Manyame Air Base, and then you work in charge of ZANU PF Secretary for Women's Affairs, and you work in the President's office, and eventually you get into politics. You are elected as a member of Parliament. Was that your own wish, or you're deployed by the party?
No, let me clarify that. It's not Manyame base, but it's ZANU PF 88. You know, we used to have offices in 88 Manika Road, yes. After the liberation, I had come from the liberation struggle. You know, Sally Mugabe sponsored us to go to Polytechnic, and I did some secretarial courses. And that's the same time I was working in the Women's Affairs.
Talk to me about the role that Sally played with you in terms of mentoring you personally. What was your experience of Sally?
She did build my life. She made me to be what I am. In fact, she's the one who discovered the strength that I had. She's the one who discovered, you know, this. I can say she knew that this lady has got, you know, the willpower and also the strength to be able to move mountains. You know, I didn't know, because when I was working with her, we used to go for political rallies with her. It was her, Mai Munyati, Maita Kawira, you know, the old lady. You remember them very well. The team, they are late made, they are so rest in eternal peace. So they used to go for rallies with the Mahofas and so forth. And each time I would go with them and I would take notes. And when we come back, which is something that has never been happening, after some time, then I would go in, we remind the first lady to say, do you remember when we went to Bindura? You promised this, this, and that. If we're to go back, please don't forget to address that.
Wow.
So they were shocked to say, this young lady, how can she, even, you know, Mai Takawira, Mai Munyati, and so forth. So each time they would go out, they would want to go with me. But for me, it was again a learning process. So you see how I was groomed.
Yes.
It was about walking the talk with the politicians. So at a later stage, you know, she realized that she built confidence in me. And she said, Margaret, have you noticed that female combatants are suffering a lot? Very little has been done to improve the lives of comrades. What can you do, Margaret? And I said, let me try to put a few together. It's true, because there are some who come from Chitungwiza barefooted, is coming to as far as Central. You know, I used to say work at Central Police Station when I was working in the President's Department. So she says to me, do something, Margaret. What can you do? Then I said, let me start to come up with an association where we can try to regroup and see how we can help each other. So I came up with this Female Ex-Combatant Association. And then it was just cut in the middle, because they said, you know, like she wants to influence these people who vakatozvirarira zvava kuda kumutsa vanhu vakararama ganonetsa ndopaanongonetsa chete. So somehow, you know, we infiltrated and things were not well, we just abandoned it. And she says, so what are you going to do? You need to bring these comrades together and see what you can do. Then I said, what else can we do, ma'am? She says, think about something. Then that's when we thought about the War Veterans Association. Our first day of that meeting, there was Shoniwa, there was the late Mayowe, who was the ambassador in Mozambique. There was Marco Verem, there was Brigadier Mtambara. We managed to round them up and we had a meeting. I remember it was at Park Lane. We didn't know that there was one CIO who taped us. And you know, with all the emotions we had, one after another would say all the rubbish things.
But that's what was not rubbish. You were talking your mind. You were talking your mind.
I can't say, pardon me for saying rubbish, because we were saying our peace of mind. So said every experience that they had. The tape was taken to the minister. At that time, it was Sikaramai.
Minister of State.
He listened to it. My God, it was something else. To cut the story short, I remember, I'm just cutting the story short. I remember I was called, and Mutandi was the DG, or he was the assistant. So they called me, they said, they played the tape. They said to me, what are you trying to do? And I said, Comrade Minister, what is it that I've done which is wrong? This meeting, what were you saying? You were criticizing all my chefs and everything. Who are you? Then I remember the last words I said to him, because he asked me to go and ask him Mutande to play the tape for me. He did play the tape, and I confirmed, yes, I was there, and I did say that. And we want to form our Veterans Association so that we come together, we fight as one. I repeated that. And I remember saying to the minister, Comrade Minister, it will come the time when the true revolutionaries will take their pace. And I walked out. Just like that, I walked out. I was moved from my station where I used to work. Trevor, I went
in the president's office.
Trevor, I went through a terrible time. I was given a tiny office which was in the same floor with the minister so that people would see my movements. My duty was to look at COVID and OVID, looking at your newspapers again. That was my duty, to look at the newspaper, identify what, and be able to feature the story which can actually develop to be something else, or which can cause harm.
What were you an agent then, Central Intelligence Agency at that time?
Yes, at that time I was working for CIO. Okay. So I was, that's, to me it was a torture, honestly. I was a field officer to come in, just look at your every newspaper and identify with what so that was my work. And what used to happen is, in that process, I don't know where I got the intelligence and the way I got, to be what I was. I decided to say, okay, now I need to move out. I need to find a strategy. And this is the time when Sally had said to me, come up with this association. And she said she was going to sponsor it. Of course, we worked hard. We put comrades, Anna Guy, Gusu, Anna Gwesela, Nani. I went as far as much north. I went through the whole country, putting the war veterans together. Those who used to be called dissidents. It's an interesting part. Those who used to be called dissidents and so forth, they came up when we worked together. We got structures. It shocked them to the extent that the same system which was monitoring this, I don't know where they got wrong. I know, but they don't know where they got wrong.
Tell me, once as CIO, do they let you go out?
You go out.
Are you free?
Yes, you are free.
You can resign.
Yeah, you can resign. It's just like those in CIA. That's like in those in MID. Yes, but you just sign a secret act. It's up to you to Okay. That's it. It's just like, have a look. Take CIO as any intelligent organization in the world. You have your life. In actual fact, some are even comfortable to actually employ a person like that, because they say this person is well vested in many things, can be a good advisor.
So you joined you contest the election after having been a member of parliament, and you lose the election. You decide to go to parliament, to court, to contest the election. Something that was never done.
Say
you
that
were the
again.
First person to
say
go to
that
court
again.
To contest what was rigging in your constituency. Talk to me as brief as you can. I mean, we can spend the whole day here.
True.
So
that I need to talk about it. That has never been done, and I'm the first woman to do that. And I'm the first independent woman in parliament in an independent Zimbabwe. And the first to be an opposition in a constituency of Harare. So I need to talk about
Yes.
it. And the elections have never been challenged and won,
You did.
even though elections are rigged. True, there's rigging in elections, but I did challenge the rigging and in fact successfully.
Did you challenge it because you knew as as a central intelligence officer that this is the stuff that was done, or this is where you signed a confidentiality, not going to talk about this? Talk to me about it.
From my experience, from my elections, I knew the elections are rigged.
Okay.
Do you know the late Chair played a very big role in terms of actually trying to shape up and trying to make people understand how elections are rigged. When I lost my elections, the first person to give me a call was the late Chair, even though he's from my home area. He said, "Don't accept the results."
Wow.
Even though I knew I was not going to accept the result because I had got enough evidence that I am going to lose. In fact, before I
That
even
they fixed for you
yes,
to lose.
before I even went for the counting, they just a lot called and they said, "Margaret, don't expect any good in your results. You are going to lose, but don't accept the results." And I started getting information through that letterbox, where I got list of names of people that had voted who were not supposed to be in my constituency, where we started getting information about people, dead people who had voted, where I got information about, because my relationship, let me go back. My relationship with people as a politician, Trevor, was different. I was a people's person. And I still am, because I live with the people. I live the way they live, and I mingle with them at every moment. So I'm a person who everyone had a respect. So even the RG's office, which was managing elections, helped to give me information. Every corner, even those that were sent to spot on me or to do surveillance
They were
on me.
giving you information.
No, they would tell me to say, "Maggie, there's someone from Chinoi behind you this week. Or there's somebody from Mavuku who is going to be following you this week. Or don't do the meeting that you want to do." It's, I fell in love with the people of Zimbabwe. So much that I never had the problems. Even the petrol bombs that I would experience. At times, they would say, "No, don't go to this place. There's going to be danger." That's how intact I was. That's the difference between Maggie as a politician and the other individuals that are coming in as celebrities and becoming, presidents of political parties or leaders of political
You
parties.
lived with the people.
I lived with the people, and
Well, I experienced you as a young reporter, and you were down to earth. You were in my office a number of times, so you were user friendly. You were not arrogant. You were down to earth. You were very very informed. Um, so you win, you lose rather, and you decide to contest, and you win after discovering people who were dead, were on the voters' register, and so forth. But you did something which had never been done. You stood in Parliament. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you said the war veteran, the ZANU PF politicians that were not standing up to Robert Mugabe were Robert Mugabe's wives. That's what you said. Do you regret saying that?
To some extent, because it's like I'm undermining the role of women, especially today.
I see.
But those days, I think it had a lot of value. It carried weight.
What did it mean?
What it meant is that, because in the 80s, 90s, before we started fighting for our rights, women used to be looked down upon. Women were like subservient, and women were treated like second class. But anyway, what I meant when I said you are Mugabe's wives is this. Trevor, we used to have caucus first if there's a bill to be passed in Parliament, and we would agree to disagree in that caucus and agree to compromise. And in this case, that day, we had agreed to say we are not going to let the bill pass until certain sections were changed. To my surprise, we are now in the chamber. We are debating it. We are also taking up our concerns. It comes to voting. Those who say yes, oh my God, ultimately say yes. And I said, you emotional. You people, you guys, you are Mugabe's wife. How can you all men say yes and yet you know this thing is wrong?
And we agreed.
We agreed and you are now saying yes. Why? And Rex was so furious. How can you call me? I'm going to hit you. Then I just held on to my
Rex Dongo.
I held on to my glass of water, and I said, "You dare come closer to me, I'll punch you with this water glass." And there was row in the House of Assembly, noise everywhere, until people had to go out. Come the time I wanted to go home, I found Rex at my. In fact, the late Mavis Dzonga came rushing into Parliament. Don't ever come out. Rex says he's going to shoot you. He's standing at your car. Then I went to Mr. Speaker and I said, Mr. Speaker, I can't go home. I was shivering. I'm told Rex is waiting at my car. He wants to kill me. And the Speaker had to ring the bells, call the guards and everyone else. And they had to find an escort for me to take me home. I felt like a president. No wonder why this president don't want to leave. I was given a motorcade
To drive you home.
to drive me home. I'd never, I don't know how many minutes I took to get to my place because there were sirens.
Were you scared?
Scared of Rex.
Yeah.
No, that's not the issue. I ended up dramatizing the whole thing. Even the next morning, I said, Mr. Speaker, I wish you would permanently give me this, then I would be happy as usual.
Tell me, Margaret, with all this wealth of experience, at 15 you go to the war, you see what you saw, you experience what you saw, women being abused and so forth. You were one of the last people to see Tongogara alive.
True. We were in Maputo. And in fact, what we had done is, I told you that I used to be stubborn. I'd celebrated my birthday together with Tongogara's girlfriend. So we were sharing the same birthday. And he came with presents for us. And just after leaving those presents, that's when he took his trip back to the camps. He was coming from the Lancaster House, meeting, the Lancaster meeting. And we were also shocked the very night to hear that he had the accident.
What do you think Tongogara would say about the state of our politics now? And what do you think about where this country is? First of all, what do you think Tongogara would say?
It's a pity. I can't say exactly what he would say, but he would be disappointed. Because if you look at his shorts when he speaks, he's sort of a person who was impartial. He would say, what I want a free Zimbabwe with black and white people mingling together, living together and so forth. That's the type of Tongogara that you are talking about. Talking about where the country is today, between me and you, let's be honest enough. 34 years or more than 30 years had gone down the drain. If what is happening today, which is only 3 years, had been done in 40 years, would we not be in a Dubai? Between me and you, to be on, even if their development is going in the wrong direction, because on the other hand, with the poor people, it's also a mapatapata, we're not happy because we are not benefiting anything from it. So if the little developments that have been done, if they had been done in the last 40 years, do you think we would have remained where we are? I will tell you the Beatrice Road, we spoke about it in 1990 when I was pregnant for my second born. He now has 2 degrees. He has three children, a daughter in Form 2. That road was still not done. The same thing we talked about the Chitungwiza railway line in the 90s. And we even asked them to say, why don't they go into that boot system, build in, operate and transfer? And because these guys, they were corrupted by money. I don't know how I can express it, because all these projects could not go because there has to be one to get the kickback.
Is that over though?
It's not. It's still there.
I get the sense it's getting worse.
But yes, but what can we do as Zimbabweans?
Well, I'm asking you are the politician. What can we do?
No, that's your problem. It doesn't take a politician to correct this. Do you know the slogan in the war? Iwenenitnebasa. It means you and you.
I stand corrected.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Only
for
Margaret
that.
can do that.
Thank you.
Margaret,
Thank you.
We must come to an end.
Thank you.
I could go on. What a conversation. What a conversation. Have you read any books, Margaret, that you'd want to share with our book-loving audience there? They're watching you over there.
Okay.
Any books that you've read, one or two?
I have one for Masipula struggle. Within my struggle. You used to write a column, and you also used to write a lot about me. And I also read, Zino's book, Zino Chkiwe and Fei Chung. And I remember critiquing Fei Chung's book as well. So I don't have the books here, but I would love to one day and give you some copies. But mostly, guess what? These days, maybe because I'm in my 60s, I watch animals. Yes, that's what I watch.
They're beautiful,
and apart from that, I do follow up on, speeches, presentation made by, politicians, especially women, Michelle.
What message do you have for young women wanting to get into politics, given what you've been through?
In fact, I mentor young women. Okay. I've got a forum.
What do you say to them?
I talk to them mostly about the 3 C's.
Which are?
Commitment, courage, and confidence. You have to have the 3 C's. Once you commit yourself, you'll be able to know what exactly you want. You have a calendar. You have a plan of exactly what you want. And what I want to say to women, politics is not about a dream of saying that I wish I could be like Margaret and so forth. You have to show to the people what you can do for them. In fact, we have a problem on the upcoming generation. They just say, I've seen Madam so a politician, I want to be a politician too. No, during our days, we were identified by people to say you can be a better representative. You must be a people person. And I'm saying to the young girls, it's not about what you can do now. Go back and see what you have done for your community that can make you realize your importance for you to be a representative. That's the message.
Wow. Margaret, I suspect I will be calling you back after people have watched this show, and they will be putting me under pressure to say you should have it back on again. Margaret, thank you so much. Wow. That's all I can say. Wow.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Oh. Thank you so much. You don't know what you have done to myself for inviting me.
Thank you.
You have made me a hero. I've always been complaining that why celebrate people's heroship when they are dead?
Gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
But today you've celebrated mine, Trevor. I'm happy. Thank you very much. Just that we had little time, but thank you for that.
Allow me to turn over to our audience who are all over the world, who watch us every week. Remember, we are a weekly show. We are out on YouTube at 7 a.m. Central African Time. To ensure that you don't miss out on any of these quality conversations like the one I've just had with Margaret, please click onto the subscribe button. We invite you to subscribe, like and share and comment. We read all your comments. We've gone a step further and created podcast link. Just scroll down below this video and click onto the link for your listening pleasure. Until next time, cheers to you all.